I denne podcasten snakker vi med de fremste virksomhetene I Norge på teknologi, digitalisering og transformasjon. Hva skal til for å lykkes, og hvordan går man frem? Du lytter til Teknologi og mennesker, en podcast av Atea og Oslo Business Forum.
Da vi tilbake med en ny episode I podcasten Teknologi og mennesker. Mitt navn Christian Brosstad, og jeg jobber I IT-selskapet Atea. Et tips, hvis du abonnerer på podcasten, så får du nye episoder rett inn I din podcastspiller. And then we have to switch to English because today's guest can't speak Norwegian, so unfortunately we have to do this in English. But I promise it's going to be really good. It has become an annual affair that we talk about trends and how technology impacts society and businesses in this podcast. The world has become more complex and the speed of tech is accelerating. Are leaders making decisions based on fear, or is it fear of missing out? In this episode, we will dive into Future Today Institute's annual Tech Trend Report 2024 that was presented during South by Southwest in Austin earlier this year. Last year, we had a conversation with Amy Webb, but this year we're so happy to have Christina von Messling with us. She is head of Europe at Future Today Institute. Welcome to the show, Christina.
Thank you so much, Christian. I'm so happy to be here.
You are not in Oslo, as we can tell, but where are you in the world?
I'm unfortunately not in Oslo. I think it's a wonderful city and I can't wait to come back. I hope that I'll have the opportunity soon enough. I am right now in Berlin. So I split my time between Berlin, London, and New York. And I just started my Berlin leg and will be here through August when I'll head to London.
All the mentioned cities are very exciting now. So yeah, you must have a good life.
I'm very excited. I'm always glad to say it. So thank you again for allowing me to say it here. Wonderful cities, and just really, really excited to be able to spend extended time in Europe because as a person focusing on our European clients, I really want to be as close as possible to understand what's happening over here, what's relevant, and so happy to have the opportunity to do so.
So every year you publish this tech trend report, and it's massive, if I have to say. And I understand when I talk to Amy Webb that you don't predict the future. You kind of talk about strategic foresight. But how do you work? How do you look into the horizon? What's coming next?
Yes, so it always seems like we have a crystal ball and there's some mysticism, but actually it's the opposite. All our work is extremely data and research driven. I first want to take a step back and define quickly what is strategic foresight. Okay, so strategic foresight is actually a systematic approach that helps companies to stay resilient in light of like unprecedented disruption, something that we're all experiencing right now. And our methodology has a few different steps. The first of which is trends. And obviously, in light of the trend report, it's a very relevant topic. But that's just the first step in our methodology. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we identify trends. So we identify trends by looking at signals, but not just signals that are relevant to a specific subject matter, but we're looking at trends in all what we call our 11 macro sources, which are areas like demographics, geopolitics, economy, public health, because usually disruption doesn't stem from the industry that, is relevant for you, but from completely different areas. So we really want to get a holistic picture, yeah? So then we look for trend clusters. Where do we see, for signal clusters. So we look at where are a lot of signals to a specific topic popping up. Then when we have identified that, we use a couple of different frameworks to further qualify them as trends. So is this trendy or is this an actual trend? So that is the first step of our methodology. So we look at basically what we can know. Afterwards is the second step, which is where we're looking at uncertainties, where we look at what we cannot know. So here we look at things that we don't have under control. For example, is nationalism going to rise? Or what is going to happen to inflation? How is education going to develop? That is the second thing that we're looking for. What are relevant uncertainties within the context that we're investigating? And then out of those two elements, what we can know, trends, and what we cannot know, uncertainties, we then extrapolate plausible outcomes, which means we're writing scenarios. And Amy is always presenting a lot of those in the trend report, as well as in her speech by South by Southwest. So those are narratives which basically make you feel the data, like put all the insights that we collected into a narrative and make it more accessible. And then the last step for us is then helping our clients, our customers to make sense of those scenarios, to extract what's relevant for them, prioritize that, and then very important, take action. And that's actually brings me back to what you said in your opening statement, which is, yes, Amy always says we're not predicting the future. No, what we actually wanting to do is help our clients realize that they are in charge of the future and help them work towards the future that's most beneficial to them by showing them a variety of plausible futures.
Yeah, the whole report can be quite overwhelming in a way when you like dive into it. How many pages is it? It's like crazy.
Yes. I'm actually, it's a good question. I want to say between 800 and 900 pages, something along those lines. It's very substantial. But that's because we cover all these different areas. We have different books through a variety for a variety of subject matters. So to depict what's happening there and anything that goes beyond just surface, you need to just expand.
Yeah. We live in very uncertain times. There's like political tension, we have conflicts, even wars going on. How has this geopolitical side affected your work this time? Because I think it's more divided now, the society, so it's more difficult to navigate, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all feeling that and sensing it, are concerned about how all of this will pan out. So in regards to technology, I think the thing that we're very mostly aware of is just the rise of a tech nationalism, so that everybody, there's increased restriction on tech transfer and collaboration, as well as countries focusing on building their own ecosystems. I think mostly we see that, or one of the best examples here is between the US and China. And especially in regards to also the whole semiconductor production. And you also see, us taking action. There's a European Chips Act, which wants to stimulate semiconductor production here in Europe to kind of get out of that dependency from Taiwan. We also see it in regards to supply chain, similar things. We don't know how things pan out. We want to bring everything closer to home. How can we do that? How can we become independent? For example, technologies that we've seen really gaining steam is additive manufacturing, because you can then, manufacture closer to home, as well as like a search for a lot of new materials that make us less dependent on countries that are maybe the sole provider for specific raw materials. Another thing I think where we really see geopolitical tensions or developments kick in is in regards to green technologies. Obviously, Europe is trying to wean off Russian gas. Germany, I'm German, especially. So a lot of development there, in regards to clean energy, as well as grid technologies and storage. And then another area that's seen a lot of development or also a lot of application is, of course, like deep fakes, because of this is a year of elections. This is a super election year. So we've seen this currently at the Indian election in India, but also expect, of course, major impact in the European election as well as the US election, just with the use of deepfake media.
We're going to dive into the report. And there's, I think I've been following and reading the report for years now. I think this is the first time I see the term technology supercycle. And can you please unpack the term for us? Because I'm not sure everyone has heard about it before.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And so it comes from the economy. It's old school economics, really. A super cycle is an extended period of a booming demand. It can stretch across years. It can stretch across decades and usually comes with very fundamental systemic changes in the economy, in the society. So, for example, the Industrial Revolution is one that was kind of ushered in by the steam engine. Or another example would be the internet era, which of course was called by the internet. So those are examples of supercycles. Then, of course, this is a technology supercycle. So what about the technology aspect of it? So a technology supercycle is caused by a general purpose technology. What is a general purpose technology? A general purpose technology is a technology that has the ability to radically shape the economy and society. It has fundamental impact. Already provided a couple of examples. Obviously, the internet is one, as well as the steam engine, electricity. All those are general purpose technologies. So in the past, you'll have noticed, these immense developments were caused by just one technology. For example, the steam engine, the internet, etc. Right now, we are dealing with 3 technologies, and I know we're going to talk about that probably in a little bit. So I don't want to spill all the beans, but those are AI, synthetic biology, and then the connected ecosystem of things.
Is this cycle different from those other past? Like you talked about the internet, of course, that has changed a lot, even with electricity and stuff. But is it any different now?
Well, I think the major thing that's different is that we're dealing with 3 technologies instead of just one. So, and these 3 technologies, they enhance each other and impact each other to even pick up more and more steam. So the result, the impact of this particular supercycle will be unfathomably larger than what we've seen in the past, just because we're dealing with 3 technologies that connect and help each other scale faster and increase each other's impact.
Let's dive into those 3 technologies then. Biotechnology, why is that?
For sure. So there's 3 technologies, so AI, synthetic biology, and connected ecosystem of things. What is synthetic biology? So synthetic biology basically enables us to design biological parts and systems that don't exist currently, or to fine-tune and change biological system that currently exists, but make them useful for very specific purposes. So that helps us, for example, in the medicine, but it also helps us with the food. But honestly, what I find super exciting about this particular technology is that it allows us to create new materials. So it basically affects anybody who manufactures any sort of material. So it has incredible impact to almost any industry.
So also within computing, then, like I read somewhere silicon-based systems and also that kind of stuff.
So that is one example how these 3 technologies connect with each other. So let me dive a little bit into that. So synthetic biology, as you just mentioned, has the impact to help or to move AI technology beyond silicon-based hardware by building computers, organoids, out of human brain cells, for example, making them more efficient, faster, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, for example, one thing that how these 2 relate to each other. How does AI relate to synthetic biology? So AI really is the fundamental layer of everything. So AI really helps scale innovation and research in regards to synthetic biology. And then how does this connected ecosystem of things play into that? So the connected ecosystem of things consists of variables, of sensors, that basically record the world around us as well as our own bodies. So that is an incredible data source for AI that is currently basically just trained on internet data. And then it also obviously provides data that helps within the synthetic biology context to understand our bodies, our all biological ecosystems much, much better. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of how these 3 interconnect with each other. happy to dive
Yeah, it's
into
quite
anything
powerful,
more.
and I hope the listeners can understand the concept of it. Because do you think it's scary, or is it this is the way forward in a way?
It is happening. So I think there is no. The only thing that we can do is embrace it, really educating ourselves about it, be open to it, and understand it, so that we as a society then can make decisions about where we want to go with it. I think the most important thing as an individual can do is educate themselves about what is happening, and trying to keep emotions out of it, because a lot of these technologies touch fundamental fears that we have, like what does it mean to be human, what am I supposed to be doing, et cetera, and that creates anxiety. But that also often blocks off any kind of conversations about that technology, which then keeps a society finding its way or making decisions about how to best use it, which then enables other actors to just do their thing without society really having, any kind of influence about it. So it's really important to have nuanced and nuanced discussions, enable spaces for that, because it is complex, it is scary. We've never been in a situation like that before, and that's okay. But let's be open. Let's have those necessary discussions.
Yeah, and even scarier when those three technologies you mentioned working together in a way. So it kind of gets
Exactly.
So yeah, I think where connectables or wearables or that kind of subject is easier to understand though. But I understand that it's not about the wearables in a way; it's about collecting data and using the data. Is that right approach?
That is a very important factor, especially in the context that we're talking about. I think for consumers, obviously, collecting the data is really important, because we can use it, for example, to improve our health, et cetera, et cetera. But in this context, it's really important because it really, really helps to improve how we use artificial intelligence. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit deeper. So right now, large language model, fantastic, amazing, all the wonderful things
That's what we all talk about these
that
days.
we
So
do.
yeah,
Exactly. Do you use them, or do you use them, or
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
you?
Every
I'm sure
day,
you do.
yeah.
Yes. So we all use them, and they're wonderful. However, we'll soon reach the limits of what they can do, because large language model in the end are trained of internet data. That means internet data. It's data that comes from the past, from stuff that already happens. It isn't trained by our behavior, by data that comes directly from us, or from data that's coming directly from the world. There's no silicon model of the world yet. So what will come next after large language models are actually large action models. Let me unpack that. What are large action models? Large action models are models that are trained on data that comes from these sensors from real life, and is able to break down complex problems into steps and then take action in real time based on the information that it receives. So it's not just trained on more data, it is trained from data from different data sources that comes from the sensors, the connected ecosystem of things that we just talked about. So that will enable AI to tackle much more complex problems, and also independently take action, not just tell us what to do, like by writing, I would recommend you doing this, but actually take those actions themselves. We see a few examples of that already today, but just very, very early, like gadgets. I don't know if you know what Rabbit is. Have you
I
heard of
actually
Rabbit?
ordered one, so I'm waiting for him. I'm in batch 7 or something, so I'm waiting for it. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, no. And
but explain what it is, because maybe the audience doesn't know. Because I like the idea, but I don't know if I like the idea of having another device.
absolutely. And I think you'll see, but I think it is important to see Rabbit in the context of a first generation model. So Rabbit is actually a large action, or like it is an action model, which was trained by human behavior. So it was trained on data of people using different applications, for example, listening to a Spotify song, or getting weather information. Yeah. And what it does is it monitors what you are doing, and then is able to replicate that behavior. So you're basically training your own action model. Very early stage, but that's basically what it is.
Is AI agents the same? Because we saw Google had its developer conference earlier. I think it was last week or this week. I can't remember anymore. But where they talked about action models and how those AI agents can do stuff like on your behalf in a way. Is that the same? Are we talking about the same concept?
It is a specific agent. Yeah, just to I don't want to get too technical, but you're heading in the right direction. You're heading in the right direction.
Well, I can't wait to get hand on my rabbit one though.
I'm very curious. The reviews have not been great, but again, I don't think it's about that. It's not about that particular device being amazing. It's about a step in the completely new direction, and that's what's super exciting. So I'm very curious how your experience is going to be.
I'll probably have to share that when I get the one. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, definitely.
How does this affect businesses in a way? Do you think this change actually in how AI behaves in a way?
Obviously, and I'm not going to talk about that in detail. AI is going to affect any industry, any aspect of how we're doing business. How is large action models going to affect businesses? So first of all, it's going to enable businesses to outsource much more complex problems or tasks to AI. For example, manage entire supply chains, entire production processes, et cetera, because of its increased capability to deal with much more complex problems. However, there's also an increased prep time, so to speak, because obviously, companies need to build underlying data ecosystem, like a data blanket, to be able to train those large action models, and obviously also to supply those large action models in real time with the necessary data that it needs in a form that it can use it. So there's a lot of prep work to be done that should be started as soon as possible by companies to build the necessary data infrastructure to even be ready for large action models down the road.
This is so exciting. It's like almost a different world, isn't it? Like the possibilities here are amazing.
It is extremely exciting to think about how AI is going to continue to evolve and support us. Yes, but it also, of course, is necessary to then explore that in a safe way, explore AI in a safe way. And I think we're still in the very early stages, if that, to wrap our mind around that part of the AI.
Well, we're going to talk about risks, because if you could give us some ideas on what kind of risk do we have to be aware of now with this supercharged cycle thing? That's a new word, new term.
I think the main risks are similar to any crisis or trauma. It's like a fear of overwhelm and like a complete shutdown, because it's just too much. I don't know where to start. All of these things are highly complex. To really truly understand what AI are and what AI is and what are large language models, where do they sit within computer science, all that. It's not easy. And we're not just dealing with AI, also synthetic biology is extremely complex. Then the connected ecosystem of things seems to be a little bit easier. But then when you look into how it all connects and what you need, for example, to install this ecosystem of data, it is a lot. So I think the main risk is either be overwhelmed and be driven by fear and completely block it off and not respond, or the other is FOMO. So suddenly AI is a solution to everything. And so we have the answer before we even ask the right questions. And then that results in utilizing an AI that is not necessary, not optimal, and then creating a frustration amongst users, costing a lot of money, not maximizing the benefits of AI, and then be frustrated and say well, we'll just go back to what we always did because this new stuff obviously doesn't work. I think those are a couple of really, that's one of the biggest risks to run into. It's And also another risk is just not being informed enough. Really taking the time to understand what's going on, looking outside of your industry for developments, and so missing out on the entirety of of what's going on, and also the possible effects. Yeah, I think, those are the major ones. Another one I already touched on, I think the polarization is a really big risk, is that the conversations are just being held very emotionally, which keeps everybody from getting to this best solution possible.
No, I was thinking, because everyone talks about AI in one or another way. What's the best approach for a business? Because, like you said, the answer to any question now is AI, but it's not, I guess. But what's your biggest advice to the listeners here?
First off, inform yourself. Really take the time, take a step back, really inform yourself about the technology. In that context, reach out to new partners to really, for example, if you have a lot of people that you talk to that come out of the startup ecosystem, find additional partners that come, for example, from research, from the academia, from the public sector. Find out what you don't know, to really understand its impact, because it is affecting everything. And change usually in disruption comes from areas that are not within your industry. It's really, really important that you are holistically informed. So once you have that, you are informed, then look at what problems does that create for you, or what opportunities does it create for you? What problems do you currently have? And then based on that, look at how a solution could look like. And the solution might not be AI. It might be something completely different. But with this overly focus on AI, again, like you run the risk of wasting so much money, creating so much frustration, and losing time to find a real solution. So really look at the entire solution, entire spectrum of solutions, not just AI. And then once you've found that, go back and look at your value network. So look at all of the people and companies that you interact with. See and investigate as your business model is changing, as you see how these technologies affect your business. What new relationships do you need to form? How can you provide value? How is this going to shift? And then once you have find that for yourself, then define first steps to move you towards that vision. So I know that, first step is inform yourself. Really, really make sure that you collect as much knowledge as you can, especially in the light of so much change. I think that's the most important thing.
Being curious, it's more relevant than like ever before, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I like that you brought that up. Like, curiosity I love that word in this context, because it implies something very playful and positive. I think knowledge is something sometimes like, oh gosh, now I need to, read another article. But just a curiosity frames it in a much more positive way. Yeah, I like that.
You also mentioned in your report that there's a blurring line now between humans and machines, because if we buy into the concept of we all are basically data, what do you mean by all this? That the blurring line, we're like melting together in a way.
Yeah, totally. So yes, machines are becoming much larger, much bigger part of who we are. They're coming closer, literally. Okay, so I'm going to expand on this a little bit. So in the past, for example, between us and the machine, obviously was a clear separation. So we type a command in our computer or in our iPhone, and then it responds. So how are we moving closer together? So I think there's different levels here. So first of all, AI assistants are becoming just much more intuitive. So we are they're doing a much bigger variety of things. They're doing it without specifically instructed. They manage our calendars. They make purchases for us. I don't know, like automatic purchasing at Amazon. It's a very simple example, but a lot of stuff, it just becomes intuitively. We don't need to consciously interact. It becomes part of the ambiance. So that is, and it's taking over a much larger part of of activities for us. So that's, for example, one step. The next step is that we are interacting with the machine in a very different way. For example, a couple of days ago, Apple announced that you now can control your iPad with eye movement, for example. So the way that we're interacting with technology becomes much more diverse, much more intuitive as well. Then you look at wearables, our wearables becoming much smarter and are finding out much more about us, also coming closer. So in the past, it maybe was an iPhone or a machine, but now, we have smart clothing, we have smart shoes, we have smart skin, who can collect so much more information about us than in the past, where they couldn't collect anything. So they're physically coming much closer to us. Then next step, smart prosthetics. So the prosthetics that we are getting today are collected to our body. We can feel it. We can sensual reactions through them. We can monitor them through our thoughts. They're connected to our nerves. So they literally become part of who we are. Next step, brain-machine interfaces. So I don't know, you probably last year saw the news about the mute woman that was able to communicate through a digital avatar. Then Neuralink is allowed to have clinical trials. The second patient was just approved by the FDA, I think yesterday, a couple of days ago, to go there. So which is where the machine becomes part of our brains. And then even one step further is where we are now design custom cells, which are then, become literally part of who we are. So last year, the Atea Zurich developed a device or a process where they were able to trigger a cell in a mouse to produce insulin based on an electronic trigger. So just think about that more. If we would have cells in our body that were programmed to produce certain medicine on a certain signal, like staying with insulin, that would be incredible. But I mean, it could be all kinds of medication. So we would have basically our own little pharmaceutical manufacturing plant in our bodies. So those are just a few different layers of how the separation between machine and human is merging. I hope that kind of, structured kind of approach gave a little bit more, made that a little bit more tangible.
Yeah, and I guess some of the listeners are thinking, oh God, this is sci-fi. This is way beyond what we want to do. But I guess this is the way forward.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to realize every person has a choice to take advantage of those technologies or not. And I think that is a fear actually that I hear a lot. What if I don't want that? There's like this this helplessness. And I always say, well, nobody forces you to take advantage of those technologies. You don't need to. Even today, you don't need to use a computer. You don't need to have a smartphone. You don't need to use any of those things. And there are people who opt to not do that, and that's completely fine. And I think that's going to be the same moving forward. However, I think you also need to keep in mind is then you'll also not gain the advantages. For example, in medicine, preventative measures. If you don't allow technology to monitor you or your health stats, it won't be able to detect what's wrong with you. So it also won't be able to help you. So you can't have both. So you can't have like complete privacy, not share anything with a computer, but or then take advantage of the benefits that technology has for your life. And that is a totally valid choice. But I think it's important to just remember that it is your choice.
I guess the goal is to have a better and healthier life in a way. This is the end goal, isn't it? Or...
And there's many ways to do that, and you obviously don't need to use technology to lead a healthy life. Absolutely not. But technology just enables a deeper or an additional way, a personalized way to help you stay healthier based on who you are. But it's not necessary. I mean, we've survived so far without it. So, and that option will continue to exist.
Yeah. One thing I loved listening to you talking about, and I think it's mentioned in the report as well, because we usually label generations, Generation X and so on, but you have introduced Generation T. And that's kind of fascinating because you say that everyone has a role in society in a way, and now we all in a transition phase. Try to explain it because I love that term.
I'm glad it resonates because it goes back to the core that we also here in FTI are really passionate about, which is taking action. So Gen T means generation transition. So which is all of us. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you are alive today, you're part of Gen T. You're part of this this generation that is exposed or is experiencing this incredible technology supercycle. So, and what's really important here is, and I touched on it a couple of times already, is just to stay informed, to be aware of the responsibility you have to take a stand and be formative how these technologies will be developed and used. So each of us has a strong responsibility and needs to be aware of the agency they have. We are not victims and like helpless onlookers to these developments. No, we have this responsibility to be formative, to take control of the future, to take control of like how that is going to look like, and that's our mandate.
Yeah, I love it. It's like a good way of looking at it, I guess.
Yes, we can't leave this the future just to Zuck and Musk and all these guys there. We need to be part of that future and decide where we're going, where we're
Yeah.
heading.
I think everyone have seen probably Black Mirror because there's some downside with this technologies. Misuse of open AI models in bad actors' hands. It could be different stuff going the wrong way. And you talked about it a little bit earlier about misinformation, elections, and stuff like that. What do you think we could do? Because there's the potential here for damaging behavior. Yeah, it's clear, it's there.
It is there, and it's very much also being executed on already. Let's just look at the India election, how deep fakes are being used there in so many ways, in authorized ways as well as in unauthorized ways, and neither one might be great. For example, we have authorized, so avatars of politicians speak to voters in a personalized way. It's not, but the user doesn't know it's a deep fake. They think it's a real person. They have AI chatbots having conversation with voters, as well as, for example, speeches are for example, Modi are being translated in real time into all different languages, which is great for accessibility, but also a huge risk. What if AI is misrepresenting something that is really, insulting, really, really divisive? In unauthorized ways, of course, we're much more aware of. For example, there was this, again, like just sticking with the election example because it's just top of mind because it's so current, where a deepfake of a famous actor who talked negatively about politicians was like obviously had an incredible reach, went viral before it was being able to be taken down. And then there were dead politicians which were brought back to life as well. So I think the risks that you spoke about, we already seen materialize in that particular conflict, but also, for example, in regards to the Ukraine war, even not even necessarily deep fake, but where footage was being shown that was actually from a completely different conflict. But obviously you don't know if there's a missile hidden somewhere. A few of us we're not there. We don't know exactly is that exactly what is being said, where it is. So I think there is we see this scenario actually already playing out today, and I'm looking very fearful towards the U.S. election and what we will see prior to that happening.
And as you said, you can't leave this regulation or make sure that they have the right behavior to the tech companies like Meta, Google, those kind of players. I think we're kind of lucky living in Europe then, because we have politicians that probably knows what's going on.
Probably. So I mean,
Yeah,
first of all, no, first of all, I totally agree
yeah.
with you. I think it's great that EU has taken a stand and taken a step at regulation. As long as we're realizing that that is just the first version of a regulation, we now need to see how is it being executed on, how is it being implemented, and so it's a big question mark. But I think there's no doubt that we need to create guardrails for technology so that we can ensure safe exploration that, that's beneficial for humanity and not harmful, or limit harmful executions.
I also heard, I never heard this expression before, but you call it fake event. I didn't know that was a was a thing. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting.
So I don't know if that is a thing. I think that is something that Amy sees coming towards us, which is basically a multimodal deep fake. So it's something where, we're not just talking about a fake picture from Pope Francis, but something where an entity creates fake content that includes a lot of different levels. So there is going to be photos, there's going to be videos, there's going to be fake headlines, all of that together to create a complete fake event. So basically just expanding of this, okay, there's a fake video, is this real or not, to really creating fake media on a multitude of channels over an extended period of time, for example, to really give the impression of ongoing events that never took place.
It's scary.
It's extremely scary, and I would say the technology to do that is already there. It's just a matter of time before something like that will be executed. So I think one thing that's really important for us is to increase media literacy. So independent from obviously regulation, which is really important, I think as long as those guardrails aren't in place or aren't ideally in place, and we're kind of helplessly exposed to those kinds of things, it's really important for everyone to deal with media in a different way. And I mean, it's a very different media landscape. It's the good old days of the newspapers where we could trust on those watchdogs on those entities to ensure the quality of the information we receive. Now that we're basically on our own and just exposed to anything, we really need to develop a new understanding of what media is and how and what we do with it. So that until we have found more on a societal level, on a regulation level, ways to differentiate.
So basically, we need a strong editorial media and fact checking. Because if you can't hand that over to the consumer, they're not able to detect what's fake or not, I guess.
I really want to bring it back to the individual, where I think it is important for every individual to just shift their attitude towards media and become just more discerning about what they're seeing. And not, for example, when you see something, that you first do, for example, well, what's the source of this? What's the context? What's the reputation? That you're not just taking something in and say like, okay, that's in the media, so that's true. But that you're just develop a much more critical attitude and question much more what you see before you actually believe that particular source. For example, also that, okay, this is one, do I see other signals that are saying the same thing? Where are those coming from? What's the background of those sources, etc.? So it is more work for the individual, but I think it is an imperative skill to develop, because we don't know how fast and what kind of regulation we will see, if that's, from a governing body or editorial sources or the tech companies. We don't know, but we are being exposed to those kind of dangerous right now. So I think we need to step into our responsibility in that regards as well.
I agree. We have to wrap it up soon, but there's one question need to be asked. Should we be optimistic or worried about the future?
Optimistic. Because think about it, and I think Amy talks about that, as she spoke about it in her talk as well, is, technology is never going to be as bad as it's going to be today. Everything is getting much better. The capabilities, the problems that technology will help us solve in regards to medicine, in regards to food, in regards to climate, it's incredible, and we need it to solve the problems that we're facing. So I think it's a exciting time. It's a wonderful time. We're really at the brink of something incredible, and I do believe in humanity, in us, the majority of us, to steer those innovations in a way that it is beneficial for humanity, for our world. There's always going to be bad actors, but again, coming back to taking action and Gen T, it is important for each and every one of us to step into our responsibility.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Christina. It's been, I learned a lot actually during this podcast, and that's the purpose of the whole podcast. So thank you so much for spending time with us. Og tusen takk til deg som har lyttet på.
Du har nå lyttet til Teknologi og mennesker, laget av Atea og Oslo Business Forum. Liker du podcasten, setter vi stor pris på om du gir oss noen stjerner, og tips gjerne en venn om podcasten.